All right, this is the yellow group video. So if you are not the yellow group, find the other videos. Um, we have finished the Revolutionary War and the United States won. Well, they're not the United States yet, but the colonists won. And so now they have to set up their own government and figure out what to do. The first thing that they're going to have to deal with is coming up with a treaty for Britain. Britain doesn't own that land anymore. It's the Americans. And the Treaty of Paris is going to lay out the agreements after the war. Because whenever you have a war, you have to have a peace treaty. And a lot of times they're signed in France. So France was an ally. It's not strange to think that it would have been dealt with in France. Ben Franklin is going to be very important in this. So you should have this sheet. If you don't, go by the table on my desk, and under the Everyone tab, there are a stack of them. Grab it, cut it out, the circle and everything. It should look like this. You're going to fold up the edges and only glue down the triangle, because you're going to write your notes on the little half circles. All right. Notice we're going to start with blue and go around clockwise. So in that first tab there, you're going to write the first thing that the Treaty of Paris did. It was signed on September 3rd, 1783 by the United States and Britain. So pause, write the blue down, and then play again. All right. The second thing it did was the United States became an independent nation. You're going to write that in this tab right here. All right, so pause and do that. When you're done with that, you're going to write the purple in the final tab. And then you need to glue it into your notebook onto page 124. When you've done that, replay the video. All right, that land that the Treaty of Paris was talking about, this is what it looked like. So this was all now part of the US. The 13 colonies were along here, and now we get some new land. The second thing they had to do after they had a peace treaty with Britain was create a new government. They weren't British citizens anymore. They had to create an American government. And that first government was called the Articles of Confederation. This is before the Constitution. The Articles of Confederation was a confederacy. That is a type of government. And it's different than what we have in the United States today. Today we have federalism, but a federal form of government. But what the first government the United States had under the Articles of Confederation was a confederacy. And what makes that different is the way that power is shared between the big central government like Washington, D.C., and the state governments like Missouri. In a confederacy, the state gives that Washington, D.C., that big government, their power, because they wanted to keep this government right here very weak. They didn't want it to have power because they had already dealt with a strong government in Britain like that, and they didn't like that outcome. So they were scared of that. In a federal government that we have today in the United States, the arrows are opposite. That Washington, D.C. government, that big government, gives power to the states, like Missouri. So at first we had the opposite. Along with this new government were some problems. Just like the French and Indian War that started the beginnings of the Revolutionary War, where Britain had to pay back those cost of that war, so they had to increase taxes. The Americans have to pay back the Revolutionary War. There's a couple problems though. The Articles of Confederation are too weak to have this happen. That central government could not tax. It could ask the states for money, but they didn't have to give it to them. So it would say, hey, Massachusetts, we need this money. And Massachusetts would say, I don't think I want to. That's not how it works today. They could not have a military, so they had no way to enforce their laws. And so problems in the states were that because that central government, that big government, couldn't tax anybody really, they couldn't pay back soldiers who had fought in the war. And we're going to see a video on Shays Rebellion about that. And they just really couldn't do anything. They were stuck. All right, so Shays Rebellion. I'm going to let you watch the video to learn about that.
The Articles of Confederation, America's first founding document, which went into effect in the 1780s, had no power to tax, could not enforce laws, and could not maintain a standing army. Under the Articles, all powers rested with the states, so the national government had no authority to accomplish anything. During the Revolution, men were off fighting for the new nation. Many of them had to take out loans to keep their farms going in their absence. After the war, the creditors wanted their money. Sometimes the states backed the debtors and ordered the creditors to forgive the debts. But sometimes they backed the creditors and the people's farms, their homes, were foreclosed. Many men were put into debtor prison until family members could come up with the money to get them out. The new nation was in a horrible crisis with inflation. The war had been financed by loans from Spain and France. The money had to be repaid, but because of the revolution, a lot of business was lost from the former colonies. Trade with the British West Indies was gone. The new government asked the states for more money, but they said no. The answer was, print more money. But of course that never works. It made the money less and less valuable. So now the people had fistfuls of worthless money. So now you have all of these farmers who had fought in the revolution, unable to keep their farms. Now they cannot feed their family, and they have no property, which at the time meant in most states they could not vote. As this was happening, people turned to the leaders they had in the war. One of these leaders was Daniel Shays of Massachusetts. Daniel Shays and the other farmers pick up their guns and go to the state courthouse to stop them from foreclosing on their homes. And it worked. You see, with no standing American military, it was the job of the state militia to put down this rebellion. Shays and the farmers were the state militia. Under the Articles of Confederation, the couldn't raise revenue, couldn't enforce laws to help the people, and did not have the power to forcibly put down a rebellion. In this instance, Shays Rebellion showed that for the American experiment to work, there had to be a stronger central government. Shays himself eventually received a pension for his 5 years of unpaid military service. Still, he actually ended his life in poverty as a heavy drinker. But due to his actions in Shays Rebellion and other similar movements, the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation were seen, and a convention was called to create the U.S. Constitution.
All right, and then the representatives are going to meet to create a new constitution in our next video. But the main ideas to take away are Articles of Confederation, a lot of weaknesses. Okay, for your assignment, you are going to need a concept map, which looks like this. And you'll notice you have 3 squares and 2 kind of rounded edge squares. that are connected to the pointy edge squares. That is really important for figuring out your concept map. I'm going to show you the information you need in it, and you need to figure out how they connect. So think about how it's organized and all of those things. Okay? Okay, so this information is what you need to fill in your concept map. So think about how you had 3 pointy squares. Notice there's 3 things listed, and 2 rounded edge squares. There's 2 things here, but you need to figure out which squares they go in, because if you say didn't control taxes from states, that might not fit with one of these. Okay? When you are done with that concept map, it needs to go on page 125 in your notebook. All right. Have a great day.